The stone floor of Baron Percival's great hall had seen better days, much like Elena herself. Her knuckles were raw, her back screaming in protest, but she kept scrubbing in slow, methodical circles. Invisible, forgettable, exactly as planned. The Lunaris stone was here. It had to be. She sat back on her heels and wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The castle was unusually frantic today, servants rushing past with fresh linens and polished silver. Someone important was arriving. Elena had learned to read the rhythms of this place, the way tension rippled through the household when the Baron needed to impress. "You there?" A sharp voice cut through her thoughts. The head housekeeper, Mistress Gwendolen, stood at the entrance with her arms crossed. "His lordship has guests arriving within the hour. Finish that floor and report to the kitchens. We need every hand tonight." Elena ducked her head. "Yes, mistress." The woman's footsteps echoed away. Elena returned to scrubbing, her mind already working. Important guests meant the Baron would be distracted. Distracted meant opportunities. Her father had been executed 15 years ago for stealing a royal relic. That's all anyone had ever told her. No trial records, no details, just the cold fact that he'd been a thief and a traitor. She'd been 9 years old, barely old enough to understand why the soldiers dragged her father away and why he never came back. But 6 months ago, Elena had found something. A merchant's ledger in a forgotten archive, listing items sold to Baron Percival 12 years past. Among the mundane entries, one line had made her heart stop. Collection acquired from Trader Bowen, formerly of the Eastern Routes. Contents: various antiquities of uncertain origin. Trader Bowen, her father's last known associate before his arrest. Elena pushed herself to her feet and carried her bucket toward the kitchens. The stone corridors were cooler here, away from the hearths. She'd memorized every turn, every alcove. The Baron's private study was on the 3rd floor, east wing. His treasury was in the cellars behind 3 locked doors. She'd managed to get through 2 of them last week before a guard's patrol forced her to retreat. Tonight might be different. Tonight, with important guests demanding attention, the guards would be watching the Baron's hall, not the cellars. The kitchens were chaos. Cooks shouted orders while kitchen maids rushed between ovens and prep tables. Elena slipped into the frenzy and was immediately handed a tray of wine cups. "Take these to the Great Hall," a harried cook barked. "The Alpha King arrives any moment." Elena nearly dropped the tray. Alpha King. She steadied her grip and moved toward the Great Hall, her pulse hammering. The Alpha King hadn't visited this region in years. What could possibly bring him to Baron Percival's minor holding? She reached the hall just as the massive oak doors swung open. Baron Percival stood at the center of the room, his round face arranged in an expression of welcome that didn't reach his small dark eyes. Behind him, his household guards stood at attention. "Your Majesty," Percival began, bowing low. "You honor my house with your presence." The man who entered made Elena's breath catch. He was tall, easily a head above Percival's guards, with broad shoulders and the kind of presence that seemed to fill the entire hall without effort. Black hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that would have been handsome if not for the intensity of his amber eyes. A neatly trimmed beard followed his jaw, and a scar cut across his chin, pale against his skin. He wore traveling leathers, well made but practical, and moved with the controlled grace of someone who knew exactly how dangerous he was. Alpha King Dorian. Elena had heard stories, of course. Everyone had. The king who'd taken the throne 3 years ago after his father's death, who'd spent those years systematically dismantling the old king's cruelest policies. Some called him reformer. Others called him weak for showing mercy. Looking at him now, Elena couldn't imagine anyone calling this man weak. Baron Percival. Dorian's voice was deep, measured. He didn't return the bow, just moved further into the hall. His eyes swept the room with the same intensity Elena used when casing a target. His gaze landed on her for half a second. Elena felt the weight of it, sharp and assessing, before he looked away. She forced herself to move, to approach with the wine tray. Just another servant, invisible. "Your message spoke of urgency," Dorian continued. "Something about your northern border." Percival's welcoming expression cracked slightly. Yes, Your Majesty. The kingdom of Halvard has begun incursions into my lands. Small raids at first, but 3 days ago they burned 2 villages. Their army is perhaps 4 days' march from this very castle. Elena poured wine into cups with steady hands while her mind raced. 4 days. That explained the panic. And you wish for crown protection, Dorian said. It wasn't a question. I wish to reaffirm my loyalty to Your Majesty, Percival corrected smoothly. And yes, to request assistance in defending your lands from foreign aggression. My lands. A hint of amusement colored Dorian's tone. How generous of you to remind me. Elena moved between the men, offering cups. Percival took his without acknowledgement. When she approached Dorian, he accepted the cup, but his eyes fixed on her face for a moment longer than necessary. She kept her expression neutral and stepped back. We will discuss terms, Dorian said, turning his attention back to Percival. But first, I've been traveling for 3 days. I assume you have rooms prepared? Of course, Your Majesty. My finest chambers. The formalities continued. Elena retreated to the kitchen, her thoughts spinning. An alliance negotiation. Military aid in exchange for something. That's what brought an alpha king to a minor baron's castle. The next morning, Elena woke before dawn to the usual sounds of the castle stirring. She dressed in her plain servant's dress and made her way to the kitchens for morning assignments. The other servants were already whispering about the previous night's dinner, how the baron and the king had spoken in low tones until late, how tense everything had felt. Elena kept her head down and accepted her tasks. But when midday arrived and the call came that the baron required attendance in his treasury, her pulse quickened. This was it. She followed 3 other servants through the castle, down into the lower levels where the air grew cool and damp. The treasury doors stood open, flanked by guards. Inside, Baron Percival gestured expansively, while Alpha King Dorian examined the contents with that same sharp attention. As you can see, Your Majesty, I am a man of considerable means, Percival was saying. While I request your military aid, I am prepared to offer fair compensation. The treasury was smaller than Elena had imagined from the outside, but packed with wealth. Gold coins in iron-bound chests, jeweled weapons mounted on walls, tapestries and ancient texts carefully stored. And on a heavy wooden table in the center, a collection of items that made Elena's heart stutter. Old things, carefully arranged, a golden circlet, a ceremonial dagger, several pieces of jewelry, and among them, an oval stone the size of a fist. Blue-gray and opaque, unremarkable except for the faint silvery veins running through its surface. Elena stared at it while pretending to arrange the wine service she'd been sent to prepare. That stone, it had to be. The shape, the coloring, everything matched the few descriptions she'd found in old texts. Choose what you will, Percival said, his voice carrying false generosity. Any item here as a gesture of goodwill in addition to the formal agreement. Dorian moved through the room slowly. He examined a sword, tested the weight of a golden statue, ran his fingers over the spine of an ancient book. Elena watched from the corner of her eye while her hands mechanically arranged cups. He was close to the table now, close to the stone. A faint vibration rolled through the air, so subtle no one else seemed to notice. Dorian's fingers stilled. Something in the relics called to him, not like curiosity, but like recognition. And then his eyes shifted, not to the treasures, but across the room. To her. Elena's stomach dropped. For a moment, the entire treasury seemed to hold its breath. I want her, Dorian said. The words echoed in the stone chamber. Elena's hands froze mid-motion. Percival blinked. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I don't understand. Dorian took 3 steps toward Elena, his gaze never leaving her face. This one. I choose her. Elena couldn't move, couldn't think. Every instinct screamed to run, but her body refused to obey. And then light exploded through the room. The stone on the table blazed silver white, so bright that everyone flinched. Elena gasped as heat rushed through her chest, foreign and overwhelming. It felt like something inside her was waking up, reaching out, connecting to... Dorian made a sound low in his throat. His amber eyes had gone wide, fixed on the glowing stone. So that's why, Dorian murmured, the words meant for no one but himself. It's you. What is this? Percival's voice cracked. He moved toward the table, staring at the stone that moments ago had been dull and lifeless. This was nothing. Just a piece of the collection. I've had it for years. The light pulsed once more, then faded. The stone returned to its opaque blue-gray, as if nothing had happened. Except everything had happened. Elena's chest still burned with that strange heat. And when she looked at Dorian, she saw the same shock reflected in his face. The Lunaris stone, Dorian said quietly. I didn't think it was real. Percival's expression transformed. Confusion gave way to sharp calculation. Lunaris, the mate bond stone. I've heard the legends, but I never thought... He looked between Elena and Dorian, then back to the stone. Your Majesty, this changes the value considerably. Surely we can renegotiate? By ancestral law, Dorian interrupted, his voice carrying absolute authority. Any artifact that reacts to a mate bond belongs to that bonded pair. The stone has chosen. It comes with me. Your Majesty, please be reasonable. Desperation crept into Percival's tone. I didn't know what I had, but now that I do, you must understand this is worth far more than simple military aid. This stone is priceless. You have 4 days before Halvard's army reaches your walls. Dorian's voice dropped to something cold and final. Without my forces, you will fall. Your castle will burn. Your lands will be conquered. You will die without ever profiting from that stone. Silence stretched through the treasury. Percival's face had gone pale. His hands trembled slightly before he clenched them into fists. You would leave me to die over a servant girl and a stone? I would honor ancient law and expect a loyal baron to do the same. Dorian turned his attention to Elena, who still stood frozen by the wine service. Come here. Elena's legs moved on their own. She crossed the space between them, her mind screaming questions she couldn't voice. When she stood before him, Dorian's expression softened fractionally. What's your name? Elena, she whispered. Elena. He said it carefully, as if testing the weight of it. Then he looked back at Percival. I will send 3 battalions to reinforce your borders. In exchange, you will swear renewed fealty to the crown and provide the supplies we discussed. And you will make no further claim to this stone or this woman. Agreed? Percival's jaw worked. Elena could see the thoughts racing behind his eyes, the calculations, the fury. But Halvard's army was 4 days away. He was out of time and leverage. Agreed, he finally ground out. Your Majesty. Good. Dorian moved to the table and picked up the stone. It remained dark and lifeless in his hand. He wrapped it in a cloth and secured it inside his leather coat. Then he gestured to Elena. With me. Elena followed him out of the treasury in a daze. Her entire body felt strange, too hot and too cold at once. The burning sensation in her chest had settled into a constant warmth, uncomfortable and impossible to ignore. A mate bond. She had a mate bond. With the Alpha King. It was impossible. Elena had never shifted, never felt even a hint of a wolf inside her. She was human, or close to it. Mate bonds belonged to shifters, to wolves who could sense their destined partners. This had to be a mistake. But as they climbed the stairs out of the lower levels, Elena caught Dorian's scent properly for the first time. Pine and smoke and something darker, wilder. And her body responded, leaning toward him without conscious thought. Not a mistake. A disaster. They left at dawn the next morning. Elena was given no time to gather belongings she didn't have, no chance to say goodbye to servants she'd barely spoken to in 6 months. Dorian simply appeared at the servants' quarters before sunrise, informed her she had 10 minutes, and waited in the corridor while she changed into the only other dress she owned. The carriage was larger than anything Baron Percival kept, black lacquered wood with the royal crest painted on the doors. 4 guards on horseback surrounded it, their armor catching the early light. Elena climbed inside with her heart hammering against her ribs. Dorian entered after her and settled onto the opposite bench. The space felt suddenly smaller. Elena pressed herself against the corner and tried not to breathe too deeply. His scent filled the carriage anyway, making that strange warmth in her chest pulse stronger. The carriage lurched forward. Through the window, Elena watched Baron Percival's castle grow smaller. She'd failed. 6 months of planning, of careful infiltration, and she was leaving without answers, without leverage, without control. Worse than empty-handed. She was leaving as the unwilling mate of the most powerful shifter alive, bound to him by magic she didn't understand. "You're planning how to escape," Dorian said. Elena jerked her attention to him. He wasn't looking at her, just gazing out his own window with that same intense focus he brought to everything. "I'm not," she lied. "You are. I can feel it." He tapped his chest, right where Elena's own strange warmth had settled. "The bond. It lets me sense your intentions. Not thoughts exactly, but direction, purpose." Elena's stomach sank. "That's not fair." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." They rode in silence for an hour. Elena watched the landscape change from Percival's managed forests to wilder territory. The road was well maintained, clearly a major trade route, but the trees pressed close on either side. When they stopped to water the horses, Elena saw her chance. The guards were occupied. Dorian was speaking with his captain. She could slip into the forest, disappear the way she'd learned to disappear in cities and towns across 3 kingdoms. She made it perhaps 20 steps into the trees before Dorian's voice cut through the undergrowth. "I wouldn't go much further. There are wolves in these woods. The real kind, not shifters." Elena froze, turned. He stood at the forest's edge, arms crossed, expression somewhere between amused and exasperated. "I wasn't running," she tried. "Elena." He said her name with surprising gentleness. "I felt you decide to run before you took the first step. Please don't insult both of us with lies." She came back to the road because there was no point in doing otherwise. He could track her, would track her, and she had nowhere to go anyway. The carriage rolled on. This time, Dorian broke the silence. "Tell me about yourself. Real information, not the frightened servant act." "I am a servant," Elena said. "You move wrong. Your hands are calloused, but not from scrubbing floors." He leaned forward slightly. "You mapped that entire treasury in 30 seconds. I watched you do it. So tell me, who are you really?" Elena met his amber eyes. They weren't cruel, she realized, just direct, unwilling to accept deflection. "I'm nobody," she said. "My father was executed when I was 9. I've been surviving however I could since." "And you survived by becoming a thief." It wasn't a question, but Elena nodded anyway. "Among other things." "The Lunaris stone," Dorian said. "You were searching for it. That's why you were in Percival's castle." Elena's throat tightened. "Yes. Why?" "Because my father died for it." The words came out sharper than intended. "That's what they told me. He stole a royal relic and was executed for it." I wanted to know what was worth his life. Something shifted in Dorian's expression. "What was your father's name?" "Does it matter?" "It might." Elena looked away, out the window where afternoon light filtered through leaves. "I don't want to talk about this." "Fair enough." Dorian settled back. "But Elena, running won't work. The bond will pull you back, and I'll feel every step you take away from me. Better to accept what's happened and work with it than fight what can't be changed." "Easy for you to say," Elena muttered. "You're not the one whose entire life just got stolen." "No," Dorian said quietly. "I'm just the one who lost his choice of mate." That silenced her. She hadn't considered it from his perspective. An alpha king could have anyone he wanted, any high-born shifter woman with the right bloodlines and alliances. Instead, he was bound to a human thief who couldn't even shift. The second day brought rain and gray skies. The road turned muddy, slowing their pace. Elena spent most of the journey watching water run down the carriage windows and trying to ignore the persistent awareness of Dorian across from her. He worked through most of it, reading reports and making notes in elegant handwriting. Occasionally, he'd ask her questions. Nothing invasive, just small things. Had she eaten? Was she cold? Did she need them to stop? It was almost worse than interrogation. His consideration felt genuine, which made everything more complicated. They were an hour past midday when the carriage jolted to a sudden stop. Dorian's head snapped up. Outside, Elena heard shouting. "Stay here," Dorian ordered. He grabbed a sword from beneath his seat and was out the door before Elena could respond. She peered through the window. 6 men on horseback blocked the road, weapons drawn. Common bandits, from the look of their mismatched armor and hungry expressions. They'd seen the royal carriage and decided to try their luck. Stupid of them. Dorian's guards had already engaged. Steel clashed against steel. Elena watched one bandit go down, then another. But more were coming from the trees, at least a dozen now. One of them circled around the fighting toward the carriage. Elena's heart jumped. She looked around for anything useful. Nothing. The carriage was meant for comfort, not defense. The door wrenched open. A man with a scarred face and brown teeth grinned at her. "Well now, what do we have here?" Elena drove her heel into his throat. He staggered back, choking. Elena followed him out of the carriage, grabbed his arm, and used his own momentum to flip him onto the muddy ground. His sword fell. She snatched it up. Another bandit charged at her. Elena parried his strike and countered with a slash that opened his shoulder. He screamed and retreated. The fighting stopped. Everyone was staring at her. Elena stood in the mud with a stolen sword in her hands and 2 bandits at her feet. Dorian's expression had gone very still. The remaining bandits decided they wanted no part of whatever this was and fled into the forest. The guards finished securing the area while Elena slowly lowered the sword. "Elena," Dorian said carefully, "where did you learn to fight?" "Here and there," she managed. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline fading into something closer to panic. She'd just revealed herself, completely, stupidly. Dorian walked over and gently took the sword from her grip. That wasn't self-defense training, that was professional. Elena said nothing. "You're full of surprises." He wiped the blade clean and handed it to one of his guards. Then he guided Elena back to the carriage. "We should keep moving. There may be more." They rode in tense silence. Elena kept her eyes on her muddy hands, her mind racing. She'd been so careful for 6 months, and now she'd destroyed her own cover in 30 seconds. "I won't apologize for knowing how to defend myself," she finally said. "I'm not asking you to." Dorian's voice was measured. "But Elena, servants don't move the way you do. Thieves might, but you're more than that. You've had formal training, military training. My father taught me," Elena said before she could stop herself. Before he died, Dorian went quiet. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to something thoughtful. "The stone that was stolen from my father. It was taken 15 years ago by someone from the Royal Guard. A captain, actually. He was caught and executed." Elena's head snapped up. "What?" The official story was that he was a traitor who stole a sacred relic. No trial, just a quick execution. Dorian met her eyes. "When did your father die?" 15 years ago, Elena whispered. "They said he stole something from the royal family." The pieces were falling into place between them. Elena could see Dorian working through it, the same calculations she was making. "Your father was the one who stole the Lunaris stone," Dorian said slowly. "Which means you infiltrated Percival's castle looking for the same stone your father died trying to steal." "I wanted to know what was worth his life," Elena said, her voice breaking. "I wanted to understand why he left me." Thunder rumbled overhead. The rain intensified, drumming against the carriage roof. "My father was not a good king," Dorian said after a long moment. "I've spent 3 years undoing his cruelties. If your father was executed without trial, that was likely my father's doing. I'm sorry." Elena didn't know what to do with his apology. She turned back to the window and watched the storm. That night, heavy rain forced them to make camp under a rock overhang rather than continue in dangerous conditions. The guards set up bedrolls and started a fire while Elena huddled in her damp cloak and tried to stop shivering. Dorian appeared beside her with a dry blanket. "Here." She took it without argument. The cold had seeped into her bones. They sat side by side as night fell and the rain continued. The fire crackled. The guards rotated watches. And slowly, inevitably, Elena felt herself drawn closer to Dorian's warmth. The mate bond pulsed stronger in proximity. She could feel it now, not just the heat in her chest, but a pull toward him. An awareness of his breathing, his heartbeat, the tension in his shoulders. "This is impossible," she said quietly. "I'm not a shifter. I've never felt a wolf. I shouldn't have a mate bond. The stone reacted, Dorian said. That's never wrong. But why? Elena pulled the blanket tighter. What does it mean? I don't know. He shifted, and his shoulder brushed hers. The contact sent warmth racing through Elena's arm. But we have time to figure it out. Elena didn't pull away. The cold was too much, and his warmth felt too good. She let herself lean slightly against him, just enough to share heat. Dorian went very still. Then, carefully, he adjusted the blanket to cover them both. Tell me about him, he said. Your father. So Elena did. She talked about vague memories of a man who smelled like leather and iron, who taught her to read and to fight, who told her stories about honor and duty, who disappeared one day and never came back. And Dorian listened. He told her about his own father, about growing up in the shadow of a tyrant, about taking the throne and discovering just how much damage one cruel king could do. They talked until the fire burned low and Elena's eyes grew heavy. She fell asleep still leaning against him, wrapped in shared warmth, while rain drummed overhead and the mate bond hummed steadily between them. Dorian's castle rose from the cliffs like something out of ancient stories. Stone towers reached toward gray skies, and banners bearing the royal crest snapped in the wind. Elena stared up at it as their carriage rolled through the gates, her stomach tight with nervousness. This was where her father had served, where he'd been arrested, accused, executed. The thought made her skin crawl. Dorian helped her down from the carriage, his hand steady on her elbow. Servants appeared immediately, bowing low. An older woman with steel-gray hair stepped forward. Your Majesty. Welcome home. Thank you, Meredith. Dorian gestured to Elena. This is Elena. She'll need rooms prepared in the East Wing. Meredith's sharp eyes took in Elena's plain dress and lack of belongings, but her expression remained neutral. Of course, Your Majesty. I'll see to it immediately. Elena was swept away into a world of marble hallways and vaulted ceilings. Her assigned rooms were larger than any space she'd ever occupied, with a proper bed and windows overlooking the sea. She stood at those windows for a long time, watching waves crash against rocks far below. A mate to an alpha king, living in a royal castle. It felt like a fever dream. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Dorian entered at her acknowledgement, carrying a leather folder thick with papers. Are you settled? He asked. As much as I can be. Elena gestured to the opulent space. This is more than I need. You're my mate. It's less than you deserve. He set the folder on the desk by the window. I have something to show you. The archives about the theft 15 years ago. I thought you might want to see them. Elena's breath caught. Now? Whenever you're ready. But Elena, some of this will be difficult to read. She crossed to the desk and opened the folder with trembling hands. The first document was an incident report, dated 15 years and 2 months ago. It described the theft of a sacred artifact from the royal treasury. The suspect? Captain Theodore Marlowe. Elena's father's name. She sank into the chair and kept reading. There were witness statements from guards, all claiming they'd seen Captain Marlowe acting suspiciously near the treasury. An inventory list confirming the Lunaris stone was missing. And at the bottom of the stack, an execution order signed by the old king himself. No trial, no investigation. Just an order. There's more, Dorian said quietly. He pulled out a separate document, older and more worn. I found this last year while reviewing old cases. It was filed wrong, buried in unrelated archives. Elena took the paper. It was a formal complaint, written in her father's handwriting. She recognized it from childhood memories of him writing reports at their kitchen table. The complaint detailed suspicious activity by one Baron Percival, then serving as the king's military advisor. It listed inconsistencies in supply orders, unexplained movements of gold from the treasury, meetings with known criminals. The date was 2 weeks before the theft. He was investigating Percival, Elena whispered. Yes, and I believe Percival discovered it. Dorian pulled out another document. This one a letter of recommendation. 2 days after your father filed that complaint, Percival wrote to the king suggesting that Captain Marlowe be investigated for possible treason. He planted the seed. Elena's hands clenched on the papers. He set him up. I think so. Your father must have realized what was happening. He stole the Lunaris stone because it was the one piece of physical evidence that could prove Percival's corruption. The stone had been logged incorrectly in the treasury records, showing up in 2 different places. Your father took it intending to expose the discrepancy and force a real investigation. But he was caught first, Elena finished. Her voice sounded hollow to her own ears. He was caught, and Percival made sure he was executed quickly before he could talk. Dorian hesitated, then pulled out one final paper. There's something else. A letter your father wrote the night before his execution. It was supposed to be sent to the captain of the Royal Guard, but it never left the prison. Elena took the letter with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded. But her father's handwriting was clear. To whoever reads this, it began, I am Captain Theodore Marlowe, and I am innocent of the charges against me. I took the Lunaris stone not to steal it, but to preserve it as evidence of Baron Percival's crimes against the crown. I have documented proof of his embezzlement and treason, hidden in my quarters at the barracks. I beg whoever finds this letter to investigate properly. Do not let my name die in shame. And please, please, look after my daughter Elena. She is only 9 years old. She has no one else. Tears blurred Elena's vision. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the sound threatening to break free. Dorian knelt beside her chair. He didn't touch her, just stayed close. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to him. To you. He was innocent. The words came out choked. All these years, I thought maybe the stories were true. Maybe he really was a traitor. But he was trying to stop one. He was a good man who died protecting the kingdom from corruption. Dorian's voice was firm. I've been working to restore his name officially, but I wanted you to know the truth first. Elena wiped her eyes roughly. Percival did this. He destroyed my father, and now he's just living in his castle, wealthy, free. For now, Dorian said quietly. She looked at him. What does that mean? It means I've been investigating Percival for months. Your father's case led me to others. Percival has been embezzling, accepting bribes, manipulating land deals. I just needed proof. He gestured to the documents. Your father provided the start. I intend to finish it. Elena set the letter down carefully, as if it might shatter. I want to help. I was hoping you would say that. Over the next 3 weeks, Elena learned more about the Lunaris stone than she'd ever imagined possible. Dorian had collected texts and testimonies from across the kingdom, and together they pieced together the stone's history. It was ancient, possibly predating written records, created by moon magic, according to some sources. Its purpose was simple: reveal and strengthen mate bonds. When brought near destined pairs, it would glow and amplify their connection. But it had a secondary property that fewer people knew about. It can awaken dormant shifter blood, Dorian explained one afternoon in the library. They sat at a massive oak table, covered in open books. Not create shifters from humans, but strengthen those who have the blood but never manifested. Like you. Elena looked up from the text she'd been reading. You think I have shifter blood? The stone reacted to you. That only happens with shifters. He leaned back in his chair. You said your father was in the Royal Guard. Was he a shifter? Yes, a wolf. And your mother? She died when I was born. I don't know what she was. Elena frowned. But if I have shifter blood, why didn't I ever shift? Every other shifter manifests by their early teens. Not always, especially not if the bloodline is diluted or if something traumatic happens during childhood. Dorian's expression softened. Losing your father at 9 years old would qualify as traumatic. Elena absorbed this. The possibility that she'd had a wolf all along, locked away inside her, felt surreal. Could the stone awaken it? She asked. According to these texts, yes. If the bloodline is strong enough, and if it's done properly. They spent hours researching, taking breaks only for meals and sleep. Elena found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it. Dorian was patient, explaining complex magical theory without condescension. He listened when she offered ideas, treated her insights as valuable. It was disorienting, being treated as an equal. Training began in the castle's practice yard. Dorian wanted to test her physical conditioning, see what her body could handle. Elena demonstrated the combat skills her father had taught her, and Dorian countered with his own training, faster and stronger but careful not to overwhelm her. They circled each other in the afternoon sun, wooden practice swords in hand. "You favor your right side," Dorian observed. "It's stronger," Elena replied, then immediately adjusted her stance. "Don't correct it, use it." He demonstrated a strike sequence that played to that strength. Work with what your body knows. They drilled for hours. Elena's muscles burned, her lungs ached, but she pushed through it. She'd survived 15 years on determination alone. She could handle this. Between training sessions and research, Elena explored the castle. She found her father's old quarters in the guards' barracks, though they'd been reassigned long ago. She stood in the small room and tried to imagine him there, young and alive, and dedicated to protecting his kingdom. "He would be proud of you," Dorian said from the doorway. Elena turned. She hadn't heard him approach. "You didn't know him?" "No, but I know what kind of man files a complaint against a corrupt baron despite the personal risk. That takes courage." Dorian entered the room. "And I know what kind of man teaches his daughter to fight and survive, even if it means she'll be alone someday. That takes love." Something tight in Elena's chest loosened slightly. "Thank you." They stood in comfortable silence. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now after weeks of proximity. Elena could sense Dorian's emotions more clearly. Right now, he felt calm, contemplative, and underneath it, a constant, steady warmth directed at her. The bond wasn't just connecting them. It was growing. One evening, 3 weeks after their arrival, they argued about Percival. "We have evidence," Elena insisted, pacing Dorian's study. "Your investigators found the falsified records, the bribe payments. We know he framed my father. Why aren't we acting?" "Because knowing and proving in a formal trial are different things," Dorian said from behind his desk. "Percival has allies, and I need to move carefully. If I charge him prematurely, he could escape or rally support. So we just wait while he continues profiting from my father's murder? We build an airtight case. We ensure justice, not just revenge." "What's wrong with revenge?" Elena's voice rose. "He killed my father. He deserves to suffer." "He does." Dorian stood, moving around the desk. "But revenge won't restore your father's name. It won't undo the damage Percival has caused to hundreds of people across his territory. Justice will. Justice is too slow. Justice is what your father wanted. It's why he took the stone." Elena stopped pacing. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Her father's letter had asked for an investigation, not execution. He'd wanted the truth exposed properly. "I hate that you're right," she said quietly. "I know." Dorian was close now, just a few feet away. "But we'll get him. I promise." Elena looked up and found his amber eyes already on her. The mate bond surged, responding to their proximity and heightened emotions. Heat flooded through her. "This bond," she whispered, "it's getting stronger." "Yes. What happens if we keep ignoring it?" "I don't know. This is new territory for me too." Elena took a step closer, then another. Dorian remained very still, watching her approach. She stopped when only inches separated them. "What if we stopped ignoring it?" she asked. "Elena." Her name came out rough. "Are you sure?" She wasn't. Nothing about this was sure. But the bond pulled at her, insistent and undeniable. And beneath her anger about Percival, beneath her grief about her father, there was something else, something that had been building over 3 weeks of conversation and training and shared meals. She reached up and pulled him down into a kiss. Dorian made a sound low in his throat and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against him. The kiss deepened, became hungry. The mate bond blazed between them, finally acknowledged, finally allowed. Elena's hands fisted in his shirt. Dorian's fingers tangled in her hair. They broke apart only to breathe before coming together again. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Elena felt dizzy with sensation. The bond had intensified tenfold, a living thing connecting them. "We should talk about this," Dorian said, though his hands remained on her waist. "Later," Elena decided, and kissed him again. The messenger arrived at dawn, his horse lathered with sweat. Elena was in the training yard when the commotion started, practicing sword forms Dorian had taught her. She lowered her blade and watched the man stumble into the castle courtyard, barely able to stand. Dorian emerged minutes later, his expression grim. He found Elena immediately. "We have a problem." They convened in his study. The messenger, after being given water and a chair, delivered his report. Baron Percival had successfully defended his territory against Halvard's invasion using the battalions Dorian had sent. But instead of expressing gratitude, Percival had retained those forces and begun recruiting more. "He's building an army," the messenger said, still catching his breath. "Word is spreading among the minor lords. He's claiming your majesty stole a sacred relic that rightfully belongs to the baronies. Some are listening." Elena's stomach dropped. "He's using the stone as justification." "Exactly." Dorian dismissed the messenger with instructions to rest and prepare a full written report. Once they were alone, he turned to Elena. "This is worse than I anticipated. Percival isn't just corrupt, he's raising open rebellion. How many supporters does he have?" 3 confirmed Baron allies, possibly more waiting to see which way the wind blows. Combined forces of perhaps 2,000 soldiers. Dorian moved to the map on his wall, studying the territories. "If I don't move quickly, he'll have time to recruit more." Elena joined him at the map. Her eyes traced the roads between Percival's territory and the capital. "How long before you can mobilize?" 3 days to gather forces, another 4 to march." His jaw tightened. Percival knows this. He's counting on having a week to strengthen his position. Something occurred to Elena. Why would he risk open rebellion? He's always operated through manipulation and shadow. This is too direct. "Desperation," Dorian said, "or something else. I need to review the archives again, look for anything we missed." They spent the afternoon buried in documents. Elena worked through supply records while Dorian examined old correspondence. The mate bond let her feel his growing frustration as hours passed without revelation. Then Elena found something. "Dorian." She held up a letter, dated 6 years ago. "Look at this." It was correspondence between Percival and a merchant, discussing the purchase of various antiquities. Most of the letter was mundane, but one line stood out. "I trust the item from Trader Bowen's collection has been stored appropriately. My research continues, though the identification process remains challenging." "He knew," Elena said slowly. 6 years ago, maybe longer, he knew the Lunaris stone was in that collection. He just didn't know which item it was. Dorian took the letter, his eyes scanning quickly. That's why he kept everything so carefully preserved. He was searching for it. Elena pulled out more documents, spreading them across the desk. "And there's more. These are shipping manifests from 3 years ago. He was importing texts about ancient artifacts, hiring scholars to consult." She found another paper. "Here, a payment to someone named Griselda, described as a specialist in old magic." "A witch," Dorian said quietly. They kept digging. The picture that emerged made Elena's blood run cold. Percival hadn't just wanted the stone as a valuable artifact. He'd been researching its properties specifically. Multiple documents referenced mate bonds, forced connections, control over shifter populations. He wanted to weaponize it, Elena whispered. Create false mate bonds that would let him control other shifters. That's why he's so desperate to get it back. Dorian's voice had gone hard. With the stone, he could force loyalty from powerful shifters, build an army bound to him by magic, not just politics. Elena found one final document, this one a draft letter in Percival's own handwriting. It was addressed to several barons and detailed a plan to restore proper order to the shifter territories by ensuring appropriate bonds between ruling families. The implications were horrifying. He was going to use it on the nobility, she said. Force mate bonds between his allies and their heirs, create a network of magically enforced loyalty. Dorian swore under his breath. That's not just corruption or rebellion. That's a fundamental perversion of mate bonds. It would destabilize the entire kingdom. They stared at the evidence scattered across the desk. Finally, Dorian straightened. "I leave tomorrow. I need to intercept Percival before he gains more support or attempts something desperate." He looked at Elena. "You'll stay here, where it's safe." "Absolutely not. Elena, this is going to be a military confrontation, possibly a battle. And you'll need someone who knows Percival's tactics, his castle, his people. Elena met his eyes steadily. I've spent 6 months studying him. I know how he thinks. You've never been in real combat. Neither had you before your first battle. She crossed her arms. Besides, I have as much right to face him as you do. More, actually. He killed my father. Dorian looked like he wanted to argue, but the mate bond betrayed his true feelings. He was worried, yes, but also reluctantly impressed. And underneath it all, he understood her need to see this through. If you come, you follow my orders, he finally said. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. Agreed. I mean it, Elena. I can't lose you. The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tight. You won't. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her chambers, anxiety and anticipation warring inside her. Tomorrow they would march to confront Percival. Everything she'd worked toward for years was finally within reach. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Dorian stood in the hallway, still dressed despite the late hour. Can't sleep either? He asked. Too much thinking. He entered and closed the door behind him. They stood in the dim firelight, the space between them charged with everything they'd been carefully ignoring for weeks. Elena, Dorian said quietly, if something happens tomorrow, if things go wrong, I need you to know something. Don't. She stepped closer. Don't say goodbye. We're both coming back. I hope so. But the mate bond, it's not complete. We've acknowledged it, but we haven't sealed it. His amber eyes held hers. If one of us dies before that happens, the other will feel it but won't be bound by it afterward. You'd be free. I don't want to be free, Elena said. The truth of it surprised her. Somewhere between research sessions and training yards and late-night conversations, she'd stopped thinking of the bond as a trap. I want this. I want you. Dorian closed the remaining distance between them. Are you absolutely certain? Instead of answering, Elena kissed him. This wasn't the heated urgency of their first kiss. This was deliberate, a choice they were both making with full understanding of what it meant. They moved together to her bed. Dorian's hands were gentle despite the clear hunger in his touch. Elena responded with equal need, months of tension finally finding release. When they came together, the mate bond blazed between them, no longer just potential, but actualized. The sensation was overwhelming. Elena could feel Dorian's emotions as clearly as her own, the depth of his care for her, his fierce protectiveness, his desire. And he could feel her trust, her determination, the way she'd come to rely on his steady presence. I've got you, Dorian murmured against her hair as they lay tangled together afterward. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. Elena nodded against his chest. The bond thrummed between them, solid and unbreakable now. And beneath it, she felt something else stirring, something that had been dormant her entire life. Her wolf. The sensation started small, like a flutter in her chest. Then it grew, spreading through her limbs with pins and needles intensity. Elena gasped and sat up. Something's wrong, she managed. I feel strange. Dorian was immediately alert. The bond, it's triggering your shift. Now? Panic edged her voice. I thought it would be gradual, controlled. First shifts never are. He gripped her hands. Elena, listen to me. This is going to hurt, but I'm right here. You can do this. The pain hit like lightning through her bones. Elena screamed. Her skeleton was reshaping itself, muscles tearing and reforming. She tried to hold on to Dorian's hands, but her fingers were lengthening, changing. Let it happen, Dorian's voice cut through the agony. Don't fight it. Elena stopped trying to resist. The transformation intensified. Her spine arched, fur erupted across her skin, her face elongated into a muzzle. Every nerve was on fire, every cell rewriting itself. And then, suddenly, it was over. Elena stood on 4 legs, panting. The world looked different, sharper. She could smell everything, hear the mice in the walls, feel the air currents through her fur. Silver fur, she realized. Her paws were white as snow. Dorian had shifted too, a massive black wolf that radiated alpha power. He approached carefully, touching his nose to hers in a gesture of welcome and recognition. For the first time in her life, Elena was complete. The missing piece she'd never known she lacked had finally clicked into place. She had her wolf, she had her mate, and tomorrow she would have justice for her father. The army marched at first light, 2,000 soldiers in formation, banners snapping in the wind. Elena rode beside Dorian at the front, her new shifter senses overwhelming after a lifetime of human limitations. She could smell the anxiety rolling off the troops, hear individual heartbeats, feel the earth vibrating under thousands of feet. Her body still ached from the transformation. Dorian had warned her that first shifts left lasting soreness, muscles adjusting to their new capabilities. But Elena pushed through it. She'd survived worse. They reached the neutral fields a week later, after the hurried mobilization and a hard march that left the troops running on grit. Percival's forces were already there, spread across the valley in defensive positions. Elena counted banners from 4 different baronies, plus mercenary companies identifiable by their mismatched armor. More than we anticipated, Dorian said quietly. He'd called his war council together on a ridge overlooking the field. He's been busy recruiting. We still outnumber them, his captain observed, and our soldiers are better trained. Elena studied the enemy positions with a thief's eye for weaknesses. Their left flank is thin. They're compensating with archers, but if we can break through there, we can surround them. Dorian looked at her with something like pride. Agreed. Captain, prepare the cavalry for a flanking maneuver. The battle began an hour before noon. Elena had never experienced combat on this scale. The clash of armies was deafening, overwhelming. She stayed close to Dorian's personal guard as they pushed through the center. His presence threw the mate bond an anchor in the chaos. She shifted mid-battle, unable to resist the wolf's demand for freedom. Her silver form drew attention, rare and beautiful even in the midst of violence. Elena used it to her advantage, moving fast and low, taking out soldiers who threatened the healers and supply lines. By mid-afternoon, Percival's forces were breaking. The left flank had collapsed exactly as Elena predicted, and now Dorian's army was closing like a vice. But something felt wrong. Elena couldn't identify it, just a nagging sense through the bond that Dorian felt it too. Then she caught a scent on the wind. Magic. Dark and oily, coming from the rear. Elena sprinted toward it, ignoring the shouts behind her. She shifted back to human form as she ran, needing hands and speech. The scent led her to the supply encampment, where a figure in dark robes was rifling through Dorian's personal belongings. Percival. He looked older than she remembered, his face haggard with desperation. In his hands, he held a small wooden box. The box where Dorian kept the Lunaris stone. Looking for something? Elena asked. Percival spun. His eyes widened when he saw her. You, the serving girl. How are you here? I was never a serving girl. Elena circled him slowly. I'm the daughter of Captain Theodore Marlowe, the man you murdered. Understanding dawned on Percival's face, followed by calculation. Marlowe's brat. You've grown. And you're a shifter now, I see. How interesting. Put the box down. I don't think so. Percival opened it with trembling hands. The Lunaris stone gleamed in the afternoon sun. This stone is mine. I've been searching for it for years. Do you know what I could do with this kind of power? I know what you plan to do. Force mate bonds. Control the nobility. Build your own kingdom on the backs of enslaved shifters. Elena took a step closer. That's why you framed my father. He discovered your embezzlement, started asking questions. You couldn't let him expose you. Your father was a fool who didn't understand how the world really works. Percival held the stone up. Power doesn't come from honor or duty. It comes from control. And with this, I'll have ultimate control. He pressed the stone between his palms and began chanting in a language Elena didn't recognize. Dark energy swirled around him, responding to the magic he'd bought from his witch contact. The stone began to glow, but not with the pure silver light it had shone for Elena and Dorian. This light was sickly green, corrupted by Percival's intentions. Stop! Elena lunged forward. Percival screamed. The stone was burning him, Elena realized. burning through his palms where he clutched it. The corrupted magic had turned on him, rejecting his attempt at manipulation. But he didn't let go. He kept chanting, kept trying to force the stone to obey. Smoke rose from his hands. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Elena shifted mid-leap, her silver wolf form crashing into Percival. They went down in a tangle. The stone flew from his ruined hands and skittered across the ground. Percival scrambled for it. Elena was faster. She shifted back, her human hands closing around the stone before he could reach it. The stone was warm in her grip, pulsing with power. Images flashed through her mind. Her father holding this same stone, trying to use it as evidence. Percival's plotting, his corruption, his cruelty. And underneath it all, the stone's true purpose. Not control, but connection. Not domination, but completion. Elena stood. Percival remained on his knees, his hands blackened and twisted. Behind them, she heard running footsteps. Dorian and his guards were approaching. "You could destroy it," Percival gasped. "Take your revenge. Make sure no one can ever use it." Elena looked down at the stone. It would be easy. Smash it against the rocks, end its power forever. Ensure that no one else could abuse it the way Percival had tried to. But that wasn't what her father would have wanted. "No," she said. "My father fought for justice, not revenge. He wanted the truth exposed, the corruption ended. Destroying this won't honor his memory." She held the stone up as Dorian reached them. His guards immediately surrounded Percival, weapons drawn. "It's over," Dorian said to Percival. "Your allies are surrendering, your army is broken, and now you'll face justice for everything you've done." Percival laughed bitterly. "Justice? From you? Your father was no better than me. We all served him, did his dirty work." "My father was a tyrant," Dorian agreed, "but I'm not my father, and you're not going to escape consequences by pointing fingers at a dead king." They hauled Percival to his feet. The battle was over, the field clearing as soldiers surrendered or retreated. Dorian had Percival brought before the assembled forces, both armies watching. Elena stood beside Dorian as he formally charged Percival with treason, embezzlement, murder, and conspiracy. She'd expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, she felt hollow. "Do you have anything to say?" Dorian asked Percival. Percival looked at the gathered crowd, at the nobles who'd supported him now, looking away in shame. "I did what I had to do to survive in a corrupt system. Marlowe was going to ruin me over a few missing coins. I couldn't let that happen." "A few missing coins," Elena repeated. Her voice carried across the field. "You framed an innocent man, had him executed, and orphaned his child over money. He should have minded his own business," Percival spat. The confession hung in the air. Several of the barons who'd supported Percival shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't known the full extent of his crimes. Dorian passed judgment. "Baron Percival, you are stripped of all titles and lands. You are exiled from this kingdom permanently, with no protection from any pack or noble house. You will leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. If you are found within our borders after sunset tomorrow, you will be executed on sight." He didn't grant Percival a clean execution in the square, not because he deserved mercy, but because death would turn him into a symbol for the desperate and the disloyal. Exile erased him without giving him a martyr's spectacle. It was a death sentence, just a slow one. Without pack or protection, Percival wouldn't survive long in the wilderness. Elena watched them drag him away and felt nothing. No triumph, no closure, just exhaustion. The barons who'd supported Percival were given the chance to renew their oaths or face similar consequences. All of them chose loyalty. Dorian's mercy toward most of them surprised Elena until she felt through the bond what he was thinking. Fear made poor foundations for kingdoms. Forgiveness and second chances built stronger loyalty than punishment. She was learning that justice and revenge were very different things. 4 months later, Elena stood before a grave marker that hadn't existed 2 weeks ago. The stone was new, professionally carved, reading, "Captain Theodore Marlowe, loyal servant of the crown, loving father. His name is restored." Flowers had been left by people who remembered him. Other guards who'd served alongside him, citizens he'd helped. His death had been unjust, but his life had meant something. I did it, Dad, Elena said quietly. I found the truth. I cleared your name. And I found something you'd be happy about. I'm not alone anymore. Dorian's hand found hers. He didn't speak, just stood beside her in silent support. They'd been formally bonded 2 months ago in a ceremony that half the kingdom attended. Elena wore silk and jewels now, but she still moved like a thief. That would never fully leave her. The Lunaris stone was locked in the royal vault, under guard. Elena visited it sometimes, maintaining the connection. She'd started a program for other shifters like her, people with dormant bloodlines who'd never manifested. The stone couldn't be used directly on them without risking corruption, but the knowledge they'd gathered could help. She was building something, not for revenge, but for a future her father would have approved of. Ready? Dorian asked gently. Elena took one last look at the grave, then nodded. They had a council meeting to attend, disputes to mediate, a kingdom to help govern. Her life had changed in ways she never could have predicted 6 months ago when she'd taken that job as a servant in Percival's castle. But as they walked away from the cemetery together, Elena felt at peace. She'd completed her father's mission. She'd found justice. And she'd discovered that the family you chose mattered just as much as the one you were born into. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them as they headed home. And that's Elena's journey from thief to queen, from alone to loved. I hope you enjoyed their story as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Drop a comment and tell me what you thought. Should I do more stories with strong heroines who fight for justice? Hit like if you want to see more, and subscribe so you never miss a new romance.